welcome back to Design Basics. Since this week I've been focusing on the Pun Fun stamp set this week, I thought that it would be fun for you guys if I showed you how I did the watercoloring. Here's a couple examples of the cards I've already shown. One with the bird. I did each of these on watercolor paper, and I'll show you what the difference makes on watercolor paper versus just regular Whisper White paper. So here's the little rocket ship, and then the little perfect cat. You can see all those on my blog. But today I thought I would show you some different ones. But there are some basics for me for watercoloring that I always do. And the biggest one is that I always use StazOn ink, no matter what kind of paper I'm stamping on. So you're going to want that. You're going to want some scratch paper to clean your blender pen. You could use an aqua painter for this, or even a paintbrush with some water, but I'm going to focus just on using the blender pen today. Now what I've done is I've taken two of my images, and this is watercolor paper. If you can see that, it has a texture to it that the Whisper White paper does not. Now the watercolor paper is really thick. It's going to give you the ability to keep blending. This you're going to have to be really careful with because it will start to peel up on you over time. Okay, so here's the little hippo just on regular Whisper White. You can see that there's even a color difference. The white Whisper White's much whiter, but the watercolor paper has kind of a beigey tinge to it, I guess. More of an ecru kind of a color. Okay, so now I guess I'm going to color, let's do the I'll start with the hippo. Now I'm going to use my basic gray ink only because that's really the only gray we have right now, and I could make him a different color, but because basic gray is our only gray option, I'm going to go with that and make him gray. But it's a very dark and very intense color, so be careful when you pick up ink. It's also permanent ink, so you're going to have to work faster with basic gray than you would with another color. Typically I'd start with a lighter color first, but in this case, because I want to go ahead and show you the hippo, I'm going to start with my gray. Now I'm just using my ink pad like I said, and I'm just going to squeeze it. That's going to give me a little palette of ink to work with. And I'm going to do the watercolor paper first, and then I'll show you on the Whisper White. And you need to think about your image, where your light source is coming from. And I think in this case, I'm going to have the light source coming up from the bottom so that his belly is going to be lighter, and then the top part of his body is going to be darker. So that's where I'm going to start, wherever the darkest color would be, and anywhere that there's a shadow. For example, under his neck right here is going to be darker, around the bow. And then, as you know, with the blender pen, just keep blending until the color fades and gets lighter and lighter. And see how I keep going over this? That's what the watercolor paper is going to allow you to do, that the Whisper White cardstock is not going to allow you to do. I'll show you. Make sure you don't get too much. Especially on the Whisper White, make sure you don't get too much. It's easier to go back and add color. You can't ever take it away once it's there. See how that doesn't want to blend as well, but then it also wants to make the paper kind of peel up, and you get those little nubbies on it like that. But just be careful. Just go really light, and if you think you have too much, just go to your scratch paper. So go to your dark area, work your way down. I'm working in circles here. It's already wanting to peel up on me. It really depends on how wet your blender pen is also. Just continue to work your way down. I'm going to make his under here a little bit of a shadow. A little bit darker. Just going to go up here to his face. See, that's already wet, so you want to be careful you don't go back and add too much wetness to it. See how that wants to peel up already? Now, I'm going to set that aside and let that dry, and then I'll add some more color to it. Add a little bit more on that side. He still looks cute. He still looks just fine. Just be careful you don't add too much. But if I let that dry, then I can come back and add some more color to it. Where over here on my watercolor paper, I can keep blending and blending and blending. I got a little string there, a little fuzzy or something. And my paper's not going to peel up like it did on the white, Whisper White cardstock. But again, this gray is probably going to be the hardest color to work with. I probably should have picked a different color. Because it seems to dry faster, soaks into the paper quicker, and it's more permanent. I'll drag that all the way down. Put a little bit of darker on his legs. Down there where you have would create a shadow. I want this to be darker up here. So I'm going to go back in and add some more. And just keep blending until you don't have any strong definition of lines. For me, watercoloring is all about layering. Adding more color over time. And just like you did on his body, you want to blend that color out to the bottom of his face, his head, to where it's almost completely white. Okay, now I'm going to leave his head for a minute. Come down here, add a little bit more definition, because his head would create a shadow underneath his body. A little bit more around the bow, because it would also create a little bit of a shadow. You could even do his tail. I want to be careful I don't get him too dark. He is a light gray hippo. Okay, so there's his body. I'm going to put a little bit more on his head now, top of his head. I'm going to put just a little bit of gray on these ears, on the tips, but not on the inside. I'll show you I have a plan for that. Alright, I think that's good enough. Now look at the difference between our hippo on our Whisper White and our hippo on the watercolor paper. To show you a different technique, we can certainly use our ink pad, just like we did with our gray. And I'm going to use my ink pad for the Whisper White, but I wanted to show you something special you could do with the watercolor paper. Pick up some of your color after you've cleaned your blender pen. Same technique with the balloon. Start where your darkest area is going to be. See how much more smooth this color is versus the gray. So that gray is just hard to work with. Put most of your color at the top. Now because we gave him pink ears, pink balloon, I'm going to go in and put just a little touch of pink inside his ears. And then we're going to give, I guess it's not a him, that'd be a her, little pink toenails. Okay, cute. Now for our watercolor paper, you can certainly use your ink pad like I said, but you can also use markers because you have more time to work with it. But only put the marker where that dark color is where your darkest shade is gonna be, and then you can pull that down. See how that works? I'm gonna leave that. I'm gonna go here and do the little ears. Just gonna put a little touch of marker on each of these little toenails. And they're so tiny, I'm not so worried about shading on them. It would be hard to tell if you did much shading on them. But again, the watercolor paper allows you to keep blending. And now I'm going to go back and add just a little bit more pink to my balloon. And then bring that color down. Now the only thing left is the bow tie, and I'm thinking pear pizzazz would be good. Go with pink and green. Careful you don't pull the gray into the bow tie, or it's going to make it look muddy. Once you've added kind of a base of color, you can go back and add a little bit more with your marker. Pull that in just a tad. Okay. Now over here for my bow tie, I'm going to use the ink pad. It's just too difficult to use a marker. And then I'll go, and where I put the marker before is where I'll go with my blender pen. Clean it off if you have too much. You want to lighten it up a little. But I'm going to go with Marina Mist and see if this doesn't work for him, because of course not all wheels are perfectly gray. So maybe this time, instead of having the lightest area at the bottom, we'll have the lightest area at the top, because he's going to be down here in the water. So I'm just going to go in with my marker and start with that. Start blending that in. We don't want to leave any sharp lines. So keep blending, blending, blending. You don't have any evidence that you colored it with a marker. See how that's working? I'm going to do, so you need to work in small areas. So if you're watercoloring a large area, just work in, or if you're new to this, then just work in really small patches. That's not getting us as far up as I want to go, so I'm going to add some on the side here. You can certainly bring your stamp pad in at this point if you want. And use both techniques. Sometimes I'll do that because it's easier to pick up less ink. I'm going to stick with the marker for this one. There we go. See how I have that nice light shadows in there? And I'm going to go back and add just a little bit more under his fin here. And then if you want this down here, his belly to be darker, you can certainly do that as well. There we go. Now the only thing that's missing is some water. So I want to go with a totally different contrasting blue. I think I'll, let's see, there's Bashful Blue, there's Marina Mist. Let's try these. Oopsie. I think I'll go with the Marina Mist. I'm just going to go with the edge of the water, like that. Bring that down. Circle, circles. I will put a little bit under his body here. Just remember that once you've gone over it with the blender pen, you've made it wet and it's going to bleed. So if you get it too close to anything you don't want to get that color on, it's going to bleed into it. And in this case, I'm okay, especially since these are two blues, with getting some blue on the well because he is supposed to be sitting in the water. Some colors, if you mix them together, though, they're going to look muddy and brown. Just blend that on out. Okay, clean your blender pen off. I'm going to show you my final tip for making a watercolored image stand out, and that is to use my Blush Blossom marker. You can use the ink pad and the blender pen as well, but if you'll notice, when I go around, you can make any white area, it just really pops a lot more. You can do this with a real pale blue, maybe a bashful blue, but you'd have to definitely use your blender pen and ink pad for that, because a bashful blue marker would just be way too strong. But can you see the contrast between the blush blossom? Well, now on this one I wouldn't go around the edge of the water, it's not necessary. And I would go in his mouth. Come back out. Just go across the top of the water. I wouldn't go down here, otherwise you're definitely going to have a defining line, and you certainly don't want that. So let's do this little rocket ship, and I'll color part of it for you, like this card right here. Okay, and I'm going to use stamp pads. So I used, you know what, I used Concord Crush on this one, but it's on watercolor paper and I used my marker, so I don't have Concord Crush in the stamp pad, so I'll use Elegant Eggplant and then Pear Pizzazz. So, create my palette. Move these out of the way. Oh, that's Tangerine. I want Pumpkin Pie. And then Concord Crush. Squeeze that one. Alright, so in our card, I think I started with green. My scratch paper over here. Hope you can see that okay. I'm going to start down here on the bottom. Add some color to the edge. Remember, you can always add color, you can't take it away. So all I did was go around the perimeter. Now I'll go back, add a little bit more on each side. This time my rocket is lightest in the middle, if you can see that. So I'm going to come in from the sides. That's enough, leave it alone. Excuse me. Do the same thing with the top of my rocket. Slowly bring that in, and the edges, but not all the way to the middle. Leave a little bit of white. Excuse me. I have a kettle on the pot back there whistling. You can probably hear it. Okay, stop coloring before your paper starts to peel up on you. Now I'm going to go into Pumpkin Pie. Go along the outside edges. Bring in just some of that, not too much. You can clean your blender pen off. Then continue blending it. You do have to work kind of quick, otherwise it's going to get absorbed. But you can always go light and add more later once it gets dry. See, that's a little bit dark. Just bring that down. Okay, I seem to have my video keeps cutting off on me, so let's make this quick. My battery may be low. Now I'm going to go back in, since the purple's been sitting for a little bit, add some more. Be careful. You don't add too much. It's starting to peel, so just get rid of what has peeled. Get it off your blender pen. And again, part of this is because I'm trying to add so much color and get this so dark. Just keep that in mind. So that wants to peel. Just get rid of that paper that's peeling. You just can't go over and over forever because it'll eventually you won't have any paper left. Well, I'm hesitant to add too much more color since it's wet. But concentrate your color on the edges, like that. Okay. Now there he is, and the only thing that's left is taking my blush blossom, going around the edges, just makes him pop. And then for this one, I would also go around all these little, just do a little bit of color on top of them, of the blush blossom. Oh, and I did see the other thing. See those little tiny circles? I made them orange here. My advice for that is if you have the marker, just do that because you can add just a tiny little touch of color and it won't bleed. Because if it's too wet, it'll bleed right into the green. So there you go. So with the marker, I'm sorry, with the blender pen on Whisper White cardstock, with the blender pen and marker on the watercolor paper. And these on the Whisper White, well, even the watercolor paper will tend to lighten up just a tad over time.